Welcome to my video about the next generation science standards. In this video, I'll talk about the next generation science standards for high school life sciences, matter and energy in organisms and ecosystems. Each science standard is made up of three components: the assessment component, the foundation component, and the connection component. The assessment component for the matter and energy in organisms and ecosystems is divided into 6 performance expectations. Students who understand matter and energy in organisms and ecosystems should be able to use a model to illustrate how photosynthesis transforms light into stored chemical energy. They also need to be able to construct and revise an explanation based on evidence for how carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen from sugar molecules may combine with other elements to form amino acids and/or other large carbon-based molecules. Number 3, students need to be able to use a model to illustrate that cellular respiration is a chemical process whereby bonds of food molecules and oxygen molecules are broken, and the bonds in new compounds are formed, resulting in a net transfer of energy. They need to be able to construct and revise an explanation based on evidence for the cycling in matter and flow of energy in aerobic and anaerobic conditions. Number 5, students should be able to use mathematical representation to support claims for the cycling of matter and flow of energy in organisms and ecosystems. And finally, students need to be able to develop a model to illustrate the role of photosynthesis and cellular respiration in the cycling of carbon among the biosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, and geosphere. Now, each assessment component was developed using a practice, a disciplinary core idea, and a cross-cutting concept from the foundation components of the next generation science standard. First, the practice for matter and energy in organisms and ecosystems are developing and using models. Students should be able to do this, especially at the high school level. Number 2, using mathematics and computational thinking is especially important for people who pursue science and people who are going to be science literate. Number 3, constructing explanations and designing solutions is a very important thing about what science really is. Now, the next important thing to discuss is the disciplinary core ideas for matter and energy in organisms and ecosystems. First, organization of matter and energy flow in organisms. 2, cycle of matter and energy transfer in ecosystems. 3, energy in chemical processes. All 3 of these things are very important for the matter and energy in organisms and ecosystem life science. Now, finally, I want to talk about the cross-cutting concepts. There's only 2 of them: systems and models, and energy and matter. These cross-cutting concepts would go into other branches of the next generation science standards. Finally, there's the connection component for the next generation science standards. Now, this connects different grades, different disciplines, and they're very extensive. We won't be going into them in this video, but you can find some of the things that you're looking for not only on the Next Generation Science Standard website, but also on the Common Core. Now, the Next Generation Science Standards do deviate quite a bit from the standard lecture format and from reading right out of a textbook. Now, how do you implement something like that in your classroom? One example, actually, that I'm very fond of is stream ecology or limnology. Now, this example promotes active learning and engages students across a wide demographic of learning types and interests. In this section, we would cover all the foundation components and prepare students for the assessment portion of the matter and energy in organisms and ecosystem standard. Now, we would begin this section with students building mostly closed aquatic ecosystems, starting with the study of nutrients and matter, and building upon their understanding. They'll continue to primary producers and then to primary consumers, possibly followed by secondary consumers, and closing with detritivores and decomposers, all starting with photosynthesis and then demonstrating the flow of energy and matter through organisms and ecosystems. Now, in order to carry this experiment out in a way that's active learning and engaging for the students, we would start by assigning students into groups, and they would elect a leader. They would begin their research. Each group will design a fish tank with substrate, primary producers, and students will be accountable through various assessments for the research being conducted. They'll understand and have a rationale for each choice they make, and as the project progresses. This will give students the opportunity to routinely carry out experiments on a natural ecosystem. They would be looking at the turbidity, the pH, the alkalinity, to understand the flow of matter through their ecosystem. And then they would be looking at the primary producers, secondary producers, etc., for the flow of energy through their ecosystem. Now, the final phase of this section would be an application to local aquatic systems and problems associated with these systems. Students will be prepared to enter the field, perform meaningful experiments, and they'll understand the nature of their local systems. They'll be able to construct explanations and provide solutions for the natural systems around them. Now, this is only one idea of how we could teach students matter and energy in organisms and ecosystems from the next generation science standards and prepare them to be meaningful scientists. Now, I would encourage you to use your imagination and the resources available to you. There are a lot of possibilities, and you're only limited by your understanding and your imagination. Thank you. Now, thank you for listening. I hope you've developed a better understanding of the next generation science standards and possible ideas for implementing them in your classroom. Good luck and happy teaching.